All right. I want to welcome you, Susan Michal, to this episode. So, Susan, I just want to jump right into this and ask you to share your story. You're an artist, and I think that your message is so powerful that a lot of people will actually be able to relate to it and get inspired by your story. So, share who you are, where you started, and where you are now, and kind of everything in between.
That's a lot. I've been doing this for a long time. And I'm so excited to be here with you because I think, like you, a part of my life has been sharing and inspiring other people. I've spoken and been an educator in my industry for many, many years, which I am a professional photographer. I've owned a portrait studio for over 20 years. But in those 20 years, things have morphed into other things. And now I've got this big fine art project that I've been working on for 5 years. And that's been a big, big deal that's pushed me into places that have been uncomfortable and new for me. And, once you've accomplished a certain level of success on one end in an industry, you would think that you would go into another end and success would be, a little easier and automatic. And that's just not true. And I think, sometimes we're put in those situations to help us grow, help us understand, the changes. So to backtrack a little bit, I was in the music business for 20 something years, sang professionally, lived out in LA. So I have truly made my living as an artist now for over 40 years, first in the music business and then as a professional photographer. And now I'm even doing some painting. I've done some writing. So it all morphs into different things. I think, a true artist is an artist no matter what kind of art form. Whether it's an interior designer, I think, or artist. If you're a potter, certainly you're an artist. But if you're a landscape architect, are you any less of an artist? I don't think so. I mean, anytime that your industry and your profession requires you to think creatively, then in fact, I believe that you're an artist. And so a chef is an artist for sure. A pastry chef absolutely is an artist. So I think it's a very broad definition. But all those years ago, I mean, I was in music when I was a kid, and I did follow my dream out to LA and managed to make a living in LA as a musician for many, many years, which, people deem kind of impossible, but I was able to. And then after being in LA for many years, I came back to Florida and kind of accidentally started my career as a professional photographer. And I had been doing some children's work. I loved working with children, and I had figured out how to do these little hand-colored pictures where back in the 50s and 40s, you would see pictures of your grandparents where they were black and white and they were hand tinted with color because there was no color back then. And I thought that was a beautiful art form. So I learned how to do that and ended up getting a calendar of my children's work before I even started my photography career. And it was all kind of crazy the way it went. And my mom and I were shopping in Walmart of all places and walked in, and there was a whole calendar of my work. I had actually licensed 13 images to a stock agency, not even really understanding what that meant. And they didn't call me and tell me, oh, we've sold 13 of your images for a calendar. And so we walked in Walmart, and there at the end, I mean, we're better than Walmart to find all your work. At the end cap was this calendar of my kids' work. And I looked at my mom and I said, maybe there's something to this photography thing. Perhaps I should investigate this. And I was 36 at that point. I had been supporting myself as a musician for all those years. And once you get to be 36, you're like, do I really want to sing in a bar anymore? Do I really want to, travel all the time and live that lifestyle? And the answer for me was no. And, thankfully, and I think, God gave me an opportunity to find another artistic career that afforded me a similar lifestyle to being a musician, in that I was in charge of my own fate. And it was still artistic, and I was still selling art, and I still was, it was up to me if I got up and went to work in the morning. And so that's a pretty big deal. When you're in a point in your life where you get to decide if you get up and go to work in the morning, then it's another whole lifestyle. No, it's been 40 years since anyone told me I had to get up and be at work.
Nice. I love that. It was my favorite part, of being your own boss, not having to go to work on Monday.
Well, but at the same time, being your own boss, as you well know, comes with many, many things that you have to be disciplined to do. I mean, there's many times that I am working on the weekends, or I'm working at till 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's, most of the time I don't mind it. It's something I want to do. I realize that I'm lucky and I love what I do. But I will say, a differentiator in me, and definitely I see this in you, which is probably one reason that we got to be buddies, is that I'm fairly disciplined. I mean, I'm really disciplined when it comes to, work and stuff. As I say that, I laugh because there's so many things I don't do that I should do. There's so many parts of it that I don't. But in general, if I compare myself to other people that I know in my industry, I am always the one that's going to be pushing. I'm going to be at work. I'm going to be doing what I need to do, returning phone calls, checking emails, making sure clients aren't waiting too long for their work, making sure things are done like they're supposed to be done, because that's where I think a lot of creative artist type fail, is they spend too much time on the art part and then they fail in the business side, which thankfully is what your programs and book is all about. And it's a hard marriage. I am just one of those people that luckily got both sides of the brain, the right and the left. And I think that's kind of a rare combination.
I do think that you could learn the left side of the brain, whatever the logical side, right? The left side.
Yeah,
I think you can learn at least to manage certain things, and my opinion is that it depends a lot on the discipline more than anything else.
absolutely.
Because the nature of an artist is to be free. You do whatever you want whenever you want, but then that discipline to get the work back to clients, to look at your numbers, to organize your business, to get your taxes done, all of that requires a little bit more discipline. And just, to me, it feels like it's hard for artists to really get it, maybe to understand it, or maybe just to actually do it.
Well, I mean, artists, the nature of an artist is to feel a little entitled, a little spoiled and a little selfish. And what I have said to clients many times, especially if there's a pushback, like I'm not an inexpensive photographer, and we live in a world where the mystery of photography has been taken away by cell phones and such, and it's been a hard thing for a trained photographer to come past, because clients feel like maybe they can go out and take their own Christmas card, or they can do whatever. It will never be what I'm able to provide for them. But aside from that, when I feel pushback, I will say, and have said many times, look, what you're paying me for is everything but the photography. That I will do for free. That I love. That is my passion. You're paying me because I have a building here that the property taxes are $585 a month on. You're paying for the electricity. You're paying for the toilet paper. You're paying for the insurance I need in case you fall outside in my studio and break your leg. You're paying for all of these business things that people don't realize. I'm running a business just like, the donut shop down the road is running the business. And I have all those business requirements and expenses. And that's what you're really paying me for, because the other part I would do for free. So when I speak to other artists, or photographers, but artists, about the business aspect, I tell them, it's the stuff you don't want to do that will build your business. It's easy to do the things that you love. It's all of those things that are hard that you don't want to do. And artists have a responsibility to themselves to understand. And let me say this by telling you, there are so many things I wish I'd done better. So many things, even right now during this whole COVID thing, I wish I had paid more attention to. So many things that I beat myself up for. But at the end of the day, I can tell you, as an artist, you don't get a pass go for free, or a free ride, that you don't have to mess with all of this stuff. I don't care if you hire someone as amazing as Tatiana to do your books. You have to get them to her in a reasonable manner. You actually have to have data to give to her, or she can't help you. And, artists, for some reason, don't seem to get that. They think they have a God-given right to be this free spirit, and it doesn't you don't have to live your business life the way everyone else does.
That's exactly how I feel, how I've perceived artists, because I do work with many of them and different kinds, artists, actors, playwrights, just creatives in general. And that's what I've noticed. And honestly, when it comes to my work, it's the same exact thing. It's just flipped slightly differently. So I enjoy doing the tax planning part of the work where I don't have to actually do any tax returns, but the organization, the emails, the collection of data, the collection of work papers, the actual preparation of the tax return is stuff that every accountant almost dislikes or outright hates. So it's kind of the same thing. It's just flipped in terms of the industry, in terms of what it is that you have to do.
Right. So, yeah. So, I mean, I wish, every day of my life that I could have been, smarter and more on track when it came to the financial aspect. Now, I've done some things right and I did some things wrong. For example, years and years ago, when I started doing weddings, and you get a wedding retainer from a bride and groom. And if you're charging enough for your work, that could be multiple thousands of dollars. Maybe it was, back when I first started, even, I think it was $1,800. If you were going to book me for your wedding day, you had to give me $1,800 to save that day, because I'm now turning away all other business for that day based on the fact we have agreement, I'm going to work for you. And a more experienced photographer said, you need to start a money market account and you need to put those retainers in that account, because that's not really your money until you do the wedding. And so I thought in the very beginning, I was going to be successful and felt successful if I could put that money in the bank aside from my normal bank account. And I never touched that money. And I didn't have the right to that money until after I photographed the wedding. Well, then once I got to the point where I was doing that, I said, okay, the great thing would be if you just don't touch that money. Let's just say that you're able to do the wedding, fulfill what your obligations are to them out of whatever else comes, because that was never the final payment. There was always more, and leave that money in there. And after a short time, I had like $50,000 or $60,000 sitting in that bank account, which for a single woman in a small business was a nice chunk of money to sit on as a little nest egg in a little rainy day account. I did not touch that money for 20 something years. Now, there was a point where I didn't add to it like I should have. If I had of, it would have been like even more money, but I invested in some real estate, and that was a smart thing to do, because now I'm sitting on over $1 million worth of real estate that's fairly paid for, and I'm 61. So, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. And so that was another way that I kind of covered my hiney and kept some money somewhere. But a few years ago, my mom passed away, and then I got sick, and I had amassed a chunk of money aside from that little thing, just in savings. And I just felt like, it's my right now to kind of slow down a little bit and take a breather. And, I would use some of that money to kind of cover bills and live off of, and just kind of, I was still working, but I just needed some time. I needed to not work like I had been working for 20 years. And then COVID hit. Well, if COVID had hit when I still had that in the bank, boy, would it have been a better ride. But I kind of thought that was the rainy day, and then the storm came. So I got kind of caught with my pants down a little bit, and so I think, you can't see everything coming. You can't see the twists and turns in the road. If we all could see that, then, life would be much easier. No, I don't think many small businesses could have possibly been prepared for COVID, even if they're multi-million-dollar businesses. We just never saw that coming. So I beat myself up a little bit right now that I wasn't better prepared. That said, so far I'm okay. Thank God that, money has come, and there was some there, and I was able to kind of cover my hiney as it went through. And now business has been picking up again. So, praying that, nothing else happens. But I think as a small business owner, my biggest fear, and one thing I always wanted to try to do, was have enough money in the bank to cover an unexpected situation, because we are in somewhat of a unique position in that we are the creator, the manufacturer, the salesperson. We are our entire business. And if I'm not working, there is no money coming in. And the E-Myth and all of these books will tell you, and then that's not a real business. And maybe it's not, but it's a business where I've paid for millions of dollars worth of real estate and lived life on my own terms. So in my heart, it's a business.
It is. It absolutely is. And maybe it's not ideal from their perspective, but as long as you enjoy what you do, I think that's the most important part of
Absolutely.
it. And for artists especially, it's critical. And that's the reason most people, not even artists only, but everyone starts a business because they enjoy something,
Right.
or they see a potential or whatever it may be, but they enjoy this one little piece of the entire business, and then they have to deal with everything
All
else.
the other pieces. Yeah. And that's where a lot of people, fail, and then they're not happy. Now, I'll tell you, obviously, I was president of our national association for a couple of years ago, which is 36,000 photographers now. And I mean, I was on the board and watched that number grow from 12,000 to 36,000 in 10 years, which is pretty incredible. And it's not great for someone like me who's in business still as a photographer. But most people get into, and we will say that I know by the numbers, don't you proud of me? By the numbers, that most people get into a business like this and they last 3 to 4, maybe 5 years. Because once the beauty of it is, once the novelty wears off, then they're not as interested. Because the fact is that the artistic part is what inspires you to get into it, but there's so much more to running a business than the actual artistic part. And most people are not prepared for that. They don't want to do the books. They don't want to deal with clients. They don't want to deal with anything but the fun part. And that's just a recipe for disaster. Whereas, someone like you comes in and you see that in people and you want to inspire talent, but there's so much more to talent in a business than just the talent.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. So how have you been able to, I mean, there are many myths floating around about kind of artists. We just talked about it offline just before this recording, about artists thinking that if they choose this profession, this path for themselves, that they sort of subscribe to being in poverty or living in poverty for the rest of their life. Can you just tell me a little bit of your story? I know a little bit of it, but I don't think the audience does. And also, I don't know all of it. Can you tell, how have you been able to do it? I mean, you've already mentioned the discipline, the kind of getting to do the not only the fun part, but also other things.
Right.
Was there anything else? And also, I want to ask you to paint a picture of what's possible for
Okay.
someone who's starting out or is maybe struggling, like we've just discussed. Maybe they're in their third year and they are struggling and they're getting
Get
the
the point.
reality check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. The lipstick has worn off of the glamorous picture. Yeah. So for me, I will say that there is no doubt I was born driven, and that's been a big plus for me. But I also have a faith that I listen to my intuition, and you follow that, and that's been a guidepost for me. Um, Certainly within the last 10 or 15 years, even more so than back in when I was in my 20s working, singing in a bar and such. But I've always had this drive and this vision. And the most frustrating thing for me is when I try to do these things and sometimes it doesn't work out the way I want it to, and it's a lot harder than it's supposed to be. So I think for me, I was definitely given a God-given gift for music. And it was something that I just innately loved so much that when the photography came around, which actually came around by way of the music, I had had my picture taken so much for music that I got intrigued with the process. And that's how I got into photography. That I had never made a great living as a musician, but I made an acceptable living and I was doing something I loved. Then when I got into photography, I realized, hey, I can actually make money and buy houses and stuff with this. This could actually really do something. And so that's when I kind of morphed from music into photography. I still do some music, but not professionally. I don't make money at it anymore. Um, but I think that for me, I always understood that it was as much a business as it was an artistic endeavor. And I do believe that that's where most people mess up. Now, you look at someone like Madonna, for example, has made many, many millions of dollars in music. And you look at someone like me who, I don't know, maybe I made $60,000 a year, $70,000 a year as a musician for 15 or 20 years, singing in bars, singing at the Ritz-Carlton, doing backup work. I mean, whatever, I'm playing at a Christmas party or a wedding or whatever it was. So I've done all of those things. I've done some really cool things and I've done some things that weren't so cool, because sometimes you have to do the things that aren't so cool to actually make a living. Sitting at a buffet in some hotel in Anaheim is not nearly as cool as singing backup for someone famous on stage. And I've done both of those things. So I think artists have to understand the realistic part of it. So when people look at you and say, oh, well, have I ever heard your records? And that's the first thing people would ever say. Have I ever heard you on the radio? Because they don't see the distance between, a musician and Madonna. All in between those two places are millions of dollars people are making, writing music for film, writing music for commercials, editing that music, recording that music, physically getting that product. Maybe you're an A&R person at a record company back in the day. Maybe you're a radio personality. I mean, all of those things are making a living in music, yet there's only a handful of people that are going to be Madonna. So there's a great living to be made. So when a parent says to a child, no, you can't make a living as a photographer. You can't make a living as an actor. You can't make a living. You're not Tom Hanks. Who do you think? You're not Tom Hanks. How many millions of actors, okay, hundreds of thousands of actors are making a living in Hollywood that no one knows their names? I mean, they've been in 20, 30, 40 movies. Maybe they've made millions. I can name people that I know that you don't know that live in $1 million houses because they've made their living as actors. Maybe they've done commercials, maybe they've done voiceover work. I mean, there's just so many places that creative people can make a living in their creative field that not necessarily as a fashion designer. Maybe you're not Diana von Furstenberg. Maybe you're not Madonna. Maybe you're not Tom Hanks. But still, you may have made hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in your field. And it's possible. So the layperson, the parent, the aunt and uncle, the friend, who just assumes that the only success is the pinnacle, the massive success, when it's just not true. So for me, I had a guy tell me once, so I love shooting dancers. I love photographing, not shooting, photographing dancers. And because of my musicality, I'm very good with dancers. And I've had a lot of experience with children. So obviously most dancers that are not professional, obviously are under 18 years old. They're basically kids. And so I have a very good rapport with them. And I have a knack for getting them to do things that make them look very professional. But I had this snotty little person who thought he was going to be the hot new wedding photographer in town say to me, it's kind of just beneath you to do a dance school. And I thought, oh, and I looked at him, I said, well, I've got this nice, big, beautiful house. And frankly, I want to be able to pay the mortgage. So by doing these dance schools at a certain time of the year, I would bring in a chunk of cash. We're talking 100 grand in 8 weeks. That, of course, got wiped out during COVID, by the way, unexpectedly. 100 grand in 8 weeks doing 10 or 12 or 15 dance schools. Not to mention all of those people that come to those dance schools, we're talking thousands of kids every year, now are directly feeding into my portrait business. So if I never made a penny off of the dance schools, I'm out there meeting 80 new 4 and 5-year-old girls every single year who are buying from me, who I now have the opportunity to contact when I'm shooting little fairies that might be a $3,000 session. or when I'm doing high school seniors or anything. I said to him, I said, well, I think you're a little misguided, honestly. I said, you need to diversify your business. Of course, how long did he stay in business? 5 years, and then he hated it and he was gone. I'm still here. I'm still shooting. I'm making a great living even through COVID. And I love what I do because as an artist, I'm sure, let's say Isaac Miraz, I never say his name right, Mizrahi, right? He was the big designer, Isaac Mizrahi, a while back.
Okay. Yeah.
He was the big guy for a while. And then all of a sudden he came out with a line in Target. And everybody's like, why are you doing that? Well, it's the same thing with, oh, good Lord, I know her name, Wang, the wedding
Vera?
dress. Yeah.
Vera Wang?
Yeah, Vera Wang. She came out with a line in Kohl's. These people are not stupid. They're just diversifying their business. There's a difference in Vera Wang having a shop on Fifth Avenue, and it cost her God knows what kind of rent to be on Fifth Avenue, and she's selling $18,000 dresses. Well, people would think that that would garner her millions of dollars. Okay, do the math. You got to sell a lot of $18,000 dresses to make millions of dollars, and her overhead and her, you're shaking your head. You know that the margins are minuscule. And I bet you're also crying that a photographer or an artist is even saying these words to you. The margins are thin.
Yeah.
So of course she had to diversify into a broader market. It's the same thing with me as a photographer. I'm diversifying into a broader market where a certain time of the year I take in this chunk of money. And is it a lot of work? Is it, glorious work? Not really. I mean, it's kind of down and dirty, nasty, hard work. But the little ballerinas are beautiful and they're cute. And so, artists by and large can be a little snotty and self-serving. And they do think that maybe they're special. And we are, but maybe not always in a good way. Does that help? Does that answer that question?
I think so. How did you get into the fine art? And how did you focus on flowers?
Oh, wow. That's a long discussion. We may have to do this again. So at 55, I met someone who had literally sold almost $1 billion worth of landscape photography. And by and large, this person was not really accessible to the average person. I mean, he was, multi-millionaire. And he's a little guarded about, his business. And we got to be friends through a crazy little situation. And I got to see the backside of his business. And here's exactly what you were asking me before, how people know it's possible. Whatever your religious belief is, I believe that God placed me in that position because I'm the kind of person that needed to see that was possible. And he took me and he put me right there in the backside of this boy's business to see that this is possible. Someone like me needs a big inspiration because I already think so dang big. And now I've got this person who's making millions of dollars a year doing this stuff. And he looked at me and he said, you're a special person. He said, you have got the ability to do much more than you're doing. And he goes, your kids' work is amazing, but you're never going to make millions of dollars doing that. And he leaned in and he looked at me and I was like, oh God, what am I going to do with this one? So I had been to Germany and I had photographed this flower out in this field and it was a beautiful thing and I hadn't done anything with it. And after he said that to me, I thought, now here's the thing, and most people will beat you up, but you're going to love this. And I've never really verbalized this publicly much. Because as an artist, you get beat down for this right here. And here's the difference. Here's the split in the road. I thought, he's a landscape photographer. He's been doing this for years. Yeah, landscapes are beautiful, but it's a very crowded market. I do not want to go there. I am a single woman running a portrait studio. I do not have the time, nor the money, nor the inclination to go do what you're doing. So I would love it to be more divinely inspired than this, but it's been divinely inspired many times along the way. What could I do that I could do repeatedly, that I could be in control of, that I would love, that is different from what everyone else is doing? And when I saw a flower, well, I did some research, and I knew that floral fine art was a big seller, but there was no one, and still is no one, attached to that in a very big branded way. There are some people that have had success with it, some that are doing well, painting definitely more than photography. Um, but no one has branded a business as a flower photographer on any level that any normal everyday person would have ever heard of. So I said, okay, that's an open market. It's got huge potential. Now, do I want to go do this outside in the rain and the heat? No. Everybody does that with flowers. I want to go and do it in the studio where I can control every little aspect, and I can do it at midnight, and I can do it in the air conditioning, and I can do it till my heart's content because I have the studio. I have all the things I need to do this. That makes sense to me from a business standpoint. If you're going to do this, do something that makes sense. Don't fight the tide. Let the tide carry you to the place that makes the most sense. So I was inspired. Absolutely. I loved the flower photography. Absolutely. But it made sense from a business perspective that I could sustain it. So that's how the flower thing got started. And I started working just for fun. There was not really a lot of thought as I will do a book, I will do gallery shows, how will this work? How will I sell all this? Because quite frankly, I am as guilty as anyone of trying to answer all of those questions when they can't be answered. In the beginning, I just had to be in the studio alone at night with flowers, loving the work. And all of the other stuff comes after that. You will never be able to answer all of the questions. If you knew the path ahead of time, it would be really easy to follow the path, but there is no path. There's no one that's going to tell me how to do this. So at 55, I made a pivot. I still have the portrait studio because it frankly pays the bills, and it has supported this crazy dream I haven't created to do this flower thing and to be able to create this fine art line that I think has massive potential. Now, over the years, there's been a lot of really exciting things that have happened and a lot of things that have not worked out the way that I hoped they would work out. And that's part of the game in any artistic career and in fact, any business. You just cannot tell what's going to happen and what's not going to happen. So that's how the flower project got started. Of course, out of that came books, out of that came gallery shows. And even what you don't know, I don't know. Have I sent you the trailer to the TV show?
No.
No. So I concepted a television show, and it's all around the flowers. And actually, because of who I am and what I know, we actually went and shot it. I had the wherewithal to pull the production team together to go shoot this thing. And it's called The Flower Life. And the .com was actually available. So I own all of that now. The Flower Life is the name of the show. And it actually highlights where and how I find these flowers that I photograph. And all of the aspects of flowers. For example, last weekend I went and did a show on a beekeeper, because without bees, there's no flowers. And I find the bees fascinating. And we're always photographing little bees on a flower, and seeing bees on flower. Well, this is it. So I thought it was a natural thing to add into it. So 6 weeks ago, lots more to this. I pitched the show to Chip and Joanna Gain, the Fixer Upper People's new channel, which should have come out in March, but then it got pushed back, and then COVID pushed it back further, and they've not even launched the channel yet. And through a miracle of connections, I got right to the president of the whole thing. And true to my personality, I just pushed it, and we did have a meeting with their developmental team. And I don't know where it's going to go from there, but that's where we are right now with that. So all of that is part of the flower project that you asked about.
That's so cool.
It's crazy.
I love it. It's beautiful. And the stories that I know about the flowers are just inspiring, very inspiring. I love that.
Well, I always say that flowers are the first art form on earth. So if I'm going to celebrate an art form, let's celebrate the first one. I mean, we can only imagine how ugly the world would be with no flowers.
That's true. That's totally true.
Absolutely. It is true. If not, we're gonna brand it that way anyway.
I love that. I love that.
My number one reason that I feel like the flower thing has stalled is because I have not paid the attention I need to my financial situation. Of all the things I could tell you why I think I have struggled, that is one of the number one reasons. I am one of those people who will not open my American Express bill because it scares me. I do not ever balance my checking account, ever. I don't even have the password to my account. I don't know what's coming in and what's going out. I've always had enough money that it was no big deal. And I don't spend hugely, but I certainly know there are times that I might have spent more wisely had I paid attention and understood how little there was there compared to what I thought there was there. And it has been on my mind from a godly standpoint that until you get this shit in order, you are not going to move forward. And when I say it that clearly, I'm like, it's not because I don't know what to do. Clearly, the terms I've used while we've been talking tells you I know what I'm talking about. I mean, I even know what intangible taxes is. Oh my God. I mean, I know these things. I've paid sales tax for 20 years. They're not coming after me. My taxes are up to date. But there are so many things that I could be doing that would put me in a better position. And I believe that God, or whatever forces you want to appeal to, is not going to allow this thing to move forward. Because if you can't clean the house you're in, why do you get a mansion on the beach? You know? And it's just always been something that I have not felt like I took appropriate care of. And when you have a little, it's not that big a deal. But when you dream big and you start thinking about the ramifications of that dream coming true, you realize, holy crap, I better get this together, because otherwise it's just going to be a big fat failure. I mean, once you're a master, it's your job to turn around and teach other people. You're now the sensei. You're now the, no, I don't think, but I think too that masters make mistakes, and masters have to stay on top of their business as much as the apprentice or the novice does. And it doesn't matter. Here's the thing. I remember when I was first starting out in photography, and I was having a conversation with some people who had been in it forever. And I came into photography when I was 36. So I was not a youngster necessarily. And I came from another artistic business. And I was very overwhelmed by how fast my business grew, and the responsibilities that I had, because I was doing lots of weddings, and that's a lot of production. You're dealing with a lot of money, other people's money, and it's a lot of cash flow throwing through the business, and it's a lot. It's overwhelming, like anything else. And I said to these people, I said, I will be so glad when I get to where you guys are, and I understand all of this, and I don't feel this way. And they just burst out laughing. And they're like, don't you understand that it never changes? And the reason that conversation is so important is because I now have a niece. Well, it doesn't make sense unless I tell you that my deceased brother had a daughter that we didn't know existed until 6 months ago. And as luck would have it, she is a professional photographer. And she even has a degree in marketing and strategy and all of this, and a minor in art. And when I talk to her, I can hear in her voice, she's just as exasperated as I was when I was in her position. And I told her just the other day, I said, I said, you don't have to be this way. I said, because you're like, oh my God, I'm just slammed. I just can't get to it all. And she's just so exasperated. And I said, the flip side could be that you have no business. And I said, what is the problem exactly? Do you not have time to frame things? Do you not have time to talk to people? What is the problem? And I said, because if anything experience will teach you, it's how to take a breath and step back and go, okay, how am I going to handle this? And you're going to handle it with a little more grace and a lot more knowledge than someone who's 35. And I just thought, it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to be so overwhelmed. You kind of choose to be that, right? And at 60, I will tell you that I have learned in many instances not to let it overwhelm me, because this too shall pass. It will all work out and you will figure out what the right answer is going to be. So we were just having that conversation the other day, and I thought, the truth is it's always going to be overwhelming and out of control if you let it be. But as a master, I believe you do learn to take control and tame the animal a bit and kind of guide it where it wants to be. If you're overwhelmed by what you're doing, it's very simple. You charge more and do less. And it's not a new notion, right?
Yeah.
You charge more and you do less. The less you charge, the more people you have to deal with. I don't care what business you're in. You charge $25, you're going to need to deal with hundreds of thousands of people to make a decent living. You charge $3,000, you're going to deal with a lot less people, a lot less stress, a lot less overwhelm.
Yeah.
So that's the big golden nugget that people in their apprentice and craftsmanship area don't seem to grasp. So as we talk, I'm trying to think, is there a thing about beyond master? And if there were, I don't know, legend?
Ooh, I love that.
Legend?
I love that. Yes, I love that.
I guess a legend is someone who has nothing to prove. They've done it all. They know all the answers. They've been there. But let's talk about Annie Leibovitz. She's a legend, right? You know Annie Leibovitz? She shoots a lot of the Vanity Fair covers. She's probably one of the most successfully known portrait photographers in the world. She photographed, didn't shoot. She photographed the Queen of England and told the Queen to take her crown off during the portrait. And her and the Queen got into it. It's on YouTube. Go find it. But Annie is she's so well known because when she was young, she shot for Rolling Stone. So she shot a lot of those iconic covers for Rolling Stone. And she got into that whole celebrity world, and her work is known because she photographs celebrities. I mean, frankly, her work would not be known if she didn't photograph celebrities. And people want to buy, remember Whoopi Goldberg laying in the milk bath? She took that. So you can go find the story that 10 years ago, 8, 9 years ago, she was going bankrupt.
Not surprised.
It ended up starting to try to sell the rights to her images, and they put a price tag of $24 million on it. And it was a huge news story at the time. And I think it's really appropriate for you to know all about this and go find out. And I thought, my God, even Annie Leibovitz is going broke. And she was worth $24 million they're putting on her catalog, And so somehow they wiggled around it. They sold a piece of property and they ended up working it out. And I don't know that it was all public knowledge how they worked it out, but it was certainly public knowledge that she was going bankrupt. Now, another famous photographer, Ann Geddes, does all the babies in the pot, right? So she made millions of dollars through licensing and publishing and all of this stuff, gave away, $4 million a year to charity and all this stuff. And apparently her business has changed so much now. Now, I would think that she would have held on to a lot of that money. You know, she had a husband that was doing very well. He was in publishing. And so that's how they understood how to, finagle all of that. I saw her on Facebook not long ago with this plea for people to sign up for her. What's that account that artists have? Which it just drives me crazy. What is that? It starts with a P. Peloton or that's the bicycle. There's a thing that you can sign up for. It starts with a P, where you can give money to artists to support their art business. And this woman who had been given the award of what's the Lifetime Achievement Award at Professional Photographers of America, and it had said she gave away $4 million to charity, was asking you to sign up for her $12 account so that she could continue to do her work the way that she wanted to do it, because it was expensive for her to do her sessions the way she wanted to do them. I had no words. What other business do you go on? Artist, let me speak to the camera here. What other business do you go on and ask other people to donate to your business because you're so dang poor you can't afford to do your work? That is where the starving artist mentality came from, and it makes me absolutely insane. Ann Geddes, I love you. If you happen to see this, I'm sorry. But you told me you gave away $4 million. Why are you asking me to give you $12 to help you continue your work? You give me some money so I can continue my work. I just don't understand the mentality of a group of professionals or artisans that would think that way from a business perspective. It made me crazy.
Yeah.
So
what you're saying is that even when you are a legend, if you don't have your money under control or numbers or taxes or everything, you could still lose it all.
You can come down in a heartbeat. Now, let me just say, I don't know what the situation with my good friend that's worth a lot, that sold a lot of landscape is right now, because I haven't spoken to him in a while. But it just makes sense that in the COVID environment and the unexpectedness of COVID, that if you have tons of retail space that you're obligated for at a very, very high dollar, i.e. shops on Madison or Fifth Avenue or Telluride or Rodeo Drive or wherever, you are unlike any other retail person. You're obligated to that money. And just because a business is making millions and millions of dollars does not mean, in fact, I think it's like turning the Titanic. It's a lot easier to turn a rowboat around in a raging ocean than it is the Titanic. And if you're a small business owner, like for me, example, I hunkered down during COVID and I got real scrappy. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to handle this? Whereas, stores, huge chains are going out of business because their overhead was too much. They didn't have a margin. They couldn't pivot. Corporations are notorious for not being able to pivot. But the smaller the business, the better opportunity you have to pivot and perhaps stay afloat. So I can't speak to what my friend's situation is, but I hope that he covered his butt. I hope that he was in a position where he could bounce back. I hope that it gave him an opportunity to see where the fat was. The smart business owner would go in there and get scrappy, figure out where the fat is, cut the fat, and see what's left, and see if you can, regroup and come out on the other side. I think artists, by and large, have probably been able to do this better than some because we're used to living scrappy. But I think a lot of a lot of creative people at a certain level, certainly a small, who did I hear talking about it the other day? Oh, what was her name? She has a handbag line. And and they sell mainly in these big retail stores. I think the handbags are in the $600 and $800 range.
Kate
And
Spade?
when hmm?
Kate Spade?
No, well, we know Kate's passed away. I don't know. That whole story was crazy. But no, it wasn't Kate Spade, and it was a small handbag line. And she said literally, we had $750,000 in cancellations in the first 3 days of COVID, because all of the retail outlets, it was a trickle down effect. I mean, all the retail outlets had to cancel, 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 cancel. And so certainly clothing designers, artisans, people who were counting on big POs to come in that now don't come in. I mean, this is language I know you understand. And for me, honestly, as an artist and anyone who happens to hear this, this is not normal speak for someone in my position. I know this. I don't have this conversation with my friends. That's one reason I was so excited when we got to be buddies, because, this is something that intrigues me. And I think that, a lot of these people have obviously gotten caught with their pants down. They can't pivot. They're way in over their heads. A lot of them have never really made a lot of money. I mean, it looks like they've made a lot of money, but we're in a world of venture capitalists and angel donors that come in and give these people all this money to open this business. Like, for example, was the Birchbox people? You remember was it the little box of samples you got? And these two co-eds from college put this company together 8 or 10 years ago, and they were the big story on Wall Street, where they had gotten all this venture capital money to come in, and there was a partnership. 4 years later, the partnership is dissolving. The girls are smart, but look, they've never ran a business and made any money. They never made any money. Their wealth was in their venture capital money. Well, if somebody gave me $3 million, I'd have money too. But when the $3 million runs out and you don't have any profits to give back, their company 5 years later still had not made a profit. Now, that part of financing, I do not understand. If somebody came to me tomorrow and said, oh, I think your flowers are freaking amazing. I think there's huge potential in this. I want to invest in your company. I'm wondering, what am I going to take that money and do that I can't do now? Now, there may be some ideas of some things I think, but that's way past this conversation. But I always find it incredibly intriguing to hear the story behind these companies who are getting all this seed money. And then 5 years later, they're still not showing any profit. No, well, you lost my $50 million. That's a sad day. We lost $50 million. Oh my God, But it's still touted as one of the most successful ventures there ever was. You've never made any money.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap, what are these people thinking? So
it happens all the time. And I actually interviewed, and the stories in my book, I interviewed for a company that also had like 2 or 3 rounds of financing. They were making some footwear or whatever, and I interviewed for them like years ago. And so I interviewed with a CEO, and when I asked him, he was like really energetic and whatever and excited. And I asked him, he was like, we just crossed a $10 million mark or something to that nature. And I was like, awesome. Like, are you profitable? And he was like, what? I'm like, are you profitable? He's like, we're not scheduled to be profitable until year 3. I'm like, and I didn't get the job, obviously. But people are so focused on the top line and the venture capital flowing that they're just completely forget that there's such a thing as profit.
Are you making any money? I mean, it's not a new concept, right?
It's not.
Are you making any money? And so, out there too, if you cut this and put it somewhere else, that's fine. But I'll just say this. So as a single woman, and I'm not saying I'm thrilled that I'm single, but that's just the way it worked out in my life. I did not meet the boy that was supposed to come in and sweep me off my feet at the same time we were going to sweep together or whatever. So as a single woman, I have ran a business where I've paid for 2 pieces of real estate that are now valued in excess of combined $1 million. And they're basically paid for. And I did that all by myself with photography. And I am not big famous. I've worked really hard. I've supplied my clients with a product that I think is way above average because that's important to me. Excellence is something, in integrity, that I don't cheat my clients. If something's wrong with something, I fix it. And my reputation in my area, and obviously even on a national level, because I was the president of our national association, has always been that I stand behind my excellence and my integrity for what I create. But at the end of the day, this is a business. And you have to make a profit. And you have to have enough confidence to charge what you're worth and to make a living like anyone else. I should not make any less money than you. I should not make any less money than a doctor. I should not make any less money than a lawyer. I am a service provider at the height of my career, and I should be able to make a nice living doing what I do. And I have. And I have now, at this point in my career, looked back and said, I've traveled to Africa, I've traveled to Bali, I've traveled to the North Pole, I've done all these amazing things. I photographed Super Bowl, I've taken pictures of US presidents, rock stars, and I've also taken pictures of people you'll never know. And they helped pay for this house I'm sitting in. Now, is that the be all and end all to own real estate? I don't know. But as a single woman right now, it's very gratifying to know that I'm sitting on about $1 million worth of real estate that's paid for. Now, it's not liquid money. So COVID scared me. You know, the house isn't completely paid for. It's got a big mortgage on it. I mean, it's got my payments are high. But I only owe $100,000 on a house that's worth $700,000. And I did that all through photography. And I only have ever had a few employees. And here's what I can tell you about employees. Employees are problematic. Now, you need to have, we all know this. My God, it doesn't matter what business you're in. Write 1 billion books on why employees are problematic. You have employees, you live their life. And at some point a few years ago, I realized I did the math and realized that if I didn't have any employees and I cut down on the amount of work I was doing and charged X number of dollars for doing it, I could make the same money. And that's what I decided to do, because I went through years where I had 3 and 4, full-time employees, then part-time employees, and I was doing all this work. And then if you do the math, sometimes you realize you're doing the work to pay for the employees. Yeah. And so I've been very lucky as an artist in some regards, but I've worked very, very hard. But I've had a clear, concise mindset of what I was going to do. I had values, which is super important. People have to understand the value of what you're selling them. And when you're selling a high-end, oh gosh, what do you call it when it's not needed? I can't remember the word. It's a discretionary, luxury item.
Luxury, yeah.
What I am, I'm a high-end luxury item. Food and going to the movies is not what's taking the money from me. Buying a boat, buying a Porsche, going to Disney World for 10 days, these kinds of things are competing with what I'm selling them. So it can be done if you're willing to put in the work.
I love it. I love it.
It's beyond that, but there's a little segment for you that I know you wanted.
Yeah, it's and I know now why we connected, because in my work, the 2 things that I'm always committed to is excellence and integrity.
Exactly. And you know what? I told my niece, I was talking to her, and I told her I was doing this interview with you, and I said, I always try to not ever use the word if the flowers go. I always say, when the big break comes for this thing, and I am so poised to take this thing to a huge level, and it doesn't scare me. I know that it's ready. And of course, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and it can take many paths, but I'm so ready for it to converge and happen. I said, the second I feel like I'm ready, I will be working with Tatiana, and I will never have to worry about the money. I said, because if you can't get the money part right, and when I speak honestly about feeling like that, one of my holdbacks right now is that I don't pay enough attention. I pay enough attention for what I've got going right now. I do. You know, my bills are paid, my taxes are paid, things are paid. But I could sit here and tell you 20 things I could have done last year that would have saved me money. Let's exit the whole COVID thing. But you know, there are things that happen that shouldn't happen, that if I were on top of it, it wouldn't happen. And so you get busy, you don't pay attention to what's important. But I know that going forward, as this thing grows, I cannot afford to let it get out of control, because I will not be able to run this thing by myself. It will be bigger than just me. And frankly, that's been a little bit probably of the mindset holdback for the whole thing, is that I know, I've been around the block a few times. I know that this thing is way bigger than me. And I don't want it to become this thing that makes me unhappy. I want to be able to do it. I want to be able to do it big. But I'm telling you, it will be lean, and it will be mean, and it will be scrappy, because I've got enough experience to understand that that's how it's got to be when it goes. And I will have someone, if it's not you, it would be someone like you. Although I have to say, not just because we're on this thing, I've met a lot of people doing what you do, and I've talked to a lot of them. And just like every photographer is not like me, every person in your profession is not like you. They just don't always care. They don't have excellence and integrity on the top line. And when this thing goes, I want someone who's going to be on the same level with me. They're going to watch it like it was their own. And, you know, I welcome the day that I could be at a position to do that. And that's where I think this whole thing is headed. So I'm really excited about it. So that's what I told my little niece the other day about you. Said, I got my girl all set up. All it needs to do is it needs to pop. I need to get that television show, and then we're going to get all this other stuff going, and it's all going to happen at one time. And I'm going to be happy as a little cat on a hot tin roof, because I got it all in place and we're ready to go with it.
So this was an interview with SusanMichal, a photographer in Florida. And you can check out her work on her social media, on her website. Check out her first flower book as well. And the bottom line, the core of this conversation is that you can make a decent, a good, even a great living being an artist. And all it takes is commitment to yourself, mindset, and commitment to your craft. And the last and most important thing is willingness to pay attention to your finances. Now, you don't have to be an accountant, but you do have to pay attention to it. I hope you enjoyed it.